Welcome to City Inside Out. Today's topic, dangerous dogs. How bad do they have to be before the city warns or cites their owners? And can dangerous dogs be reformed, or should they be sent out of the city for good? Council members are considering a proposal to give dangerous dogs more rights. Today we welcome two guests on this topic who represent each side of this heated debate. All that ahead after our news. First up today, more money woes at City Hall. Mayor Nichols this week announced mid-year budget cuts because of lower than expected revenues. Nearly $37 million will need to be trimmed, $5 million of which will come from the general fund. All this on top of the big cuts of over $60 million that had to be made last fall. By far, the bulk of the latest reductions will be made at City Light, where revenues are down the most. The mayor will also trim back several other large departments. The only divisions to get spared this time around: police, fire, and human services. The council this week heard the bad money news firsthand. It was delivered by the mayor's finance director. He warned that there may be another round of cuts next year as well.
The mayor informed many departments yesterday that he wants them to identify approximately 1.5% cuts in their 2003 budgets as a way to deal, at least in part, with this lower than expected revenue forecast. We're just now beginning the 2004 mid-biennium budget process, so we haven't, and the mayor has not directed anything about how departments are going to turn in 2004 budgets to him. We'll start that process at the end of this month and obviously work on it through the summer. But if you look at a $10 million approximate shortfall, there's going to have to be some combination of either revenue increases or expenditure cuts in order to fill that gap.
Monorail planners this week encountered a new obstacle to overcome: the current monorail. The World's Fair structure was designated a historic landmark on Wednesday by the city's Preservation Board. The new monorail is set to replace the existing line on Fifth Avenue. Landmark designation doesn't necessarily mean that can't happen, but it does make it harder to tear down the current structure. Monorail planners will have to go through lengthy negotiations with the Preservation Board. Possible options would be to locate the current monorail cars at a museum or some other spot to abide by the spirit of the historic designation. Well, the mayor's plan to revitalize Northgate will soon get a thorough review by the council. This week, the mayor's policy director appeared before lawmakers to present the plan and defend its proposals. Among the most notable is making it easier for the mall developer to expand. Many of the community councils in and around Northgate are skeptical of the mayor's measure, fearing it will undo years of neighborhood planning. Understanding that concern, Nichols' policy director wanted to make it clear to the council not just what the Northgate plan does, but also what it doesn't do.
I just want to say two things that we're not doing. One, probably most importantly, is we're not repealing the Northgate comprehensive plan. The other thing we're not doing is we're not stopping with the proposals that we're bringing to you right now. Many people, many council members, and many community members have said to us, there's more to do in this area. The things that you're proposing are not going to be enough. And I totally agree with that.
The Green Line got the green light this week. That's the so-called missing link of the Burt Gilman Trail through Ballard. A council majority sided with the bicyclists. Many industrial businesses in the area had opposed the trail extension, mainly citing safety concerns. While they didn't win the day, those concerns were noted by council members, even those who supported the missing link plan. Peter Steinbrook voted for it, but with some reluctance, saying, quote, "I would not and will not let my children on this route. It's just not safe." Well, enjoying the sun and fun of Maui at the city's expense. That fact came to light this week in a story from the Seattle Times. Apparently, some of the city's municipal court magistrates skipped some seminars during a professional conference in Hawaii last September. Magistrates are the ones who work closely with city judges and handle such things as traffic and parking tickets. All four fessed up to the fact that they didn't necessarily attend all the classes they were supposed to. They have agreed to repay the city for the expenses incurred. Why, one wonders, are conferences in such tempting locations? And speaking of travel, capping it on your way to SeaTac to, say, Hawaii or any other conference location may get more expensive. Taxi drivers are asking the city for the right to charge more for the trip. Right now, Seattle law requires a flat fee of $25 from downtown to the airport. Cabbies say that as gas prices increase, so should those fares. They want to tack on a surcharge if the cost of gas per gallon reaches a certain level. The council has heard this complaint but has yet to take any action. Earth Day is coming up next week, April 22nd. There are many activities planned around the city and region to honor the worldwide celebration. In the spirit of Earth Day, we bring you this story about some changes to the city's vehicle fleet that are especially eco-friendly. Here's Greg Nichols.
The city of Seattle uses 3,250 vehicles, and we use about 2.4 million gallons of gasoline and diesel fuel each year. We have worked hard to manage that fleet to reduce the environmental impact. But in honor of Earth Month, which is this April, we are announcing an aggressive new plan to do much more to reduce the impact of our fleet. The vehicles that you see behind me are part of our Clean Green Fleet Action Plan. They all produce fewer or no emissions. They improve air quality and reduce contributions to global warming.
And here's this week's Neighborhood Roundup, items of note that have happened outside City Hall of late. First up, the Central District, where Comcast Cable has opened a new office in a more convenient location. This means customers won't have to travel way up north on Aurora to drop off their cable boxes or do other Comcast business. The new office will be located in the city's Central Neighborhood Service Center at Promenade 23. Some neighborhood park news to pass along. We reported a few months back that the city was soliciting name ideas for 3 new parks in Seattle. Well, the winners have been chosen and we are happy to announce them. First up, Capitol Hill just off Broadway, where an expanded park that includes the existing playfield and reservoir will be named after the late Cal Anderson. He served as a state legislator in Olympia, the first openly gay man to do so. Anderson also worked here in City Hall before being elected. He was a council staffer and then an aide to former Mayor Charles Royer. Anderson, who died in 1995, was known throughout his career as a park and open space advocate. Next up, Columbia City, where a new 3-acre open space will be named Hits Hill Park. This is the site of the former Hits Fireworks Company and sits atop a hill, hence the name. And finally, a small half-acre parcel in Magnolia will be called Kiwanis Ravine Overlook. It once housed a power substation and is the only flat section of the existing Kiwanis Ravine, which explains its name. And now this item from West Seattle, where Lady Liberty lost her torch and hand this week, the work of vandals. The miniature Statue of Liberty, if you haven't been out there, greets those walking along Alki. The missing piece was later found along a nearby beach. The replica of the famed New York City statue has been in West Seattle since the 1950s, the gift of a local Boy Scout troop. And now for our City Inside Out calendar for the coming weeks. First up, a Cowan Park open house. This event will discuss improvement plans to the shelter house up there in the Ravenna area open space. The meeting takes place on Thursday, April 24th. The following day, April 25th, the Seattle-King County Board of Public Health meets in City Council chambers. There is a monorail workshop for most of the day on Saturday, April 26th. The purpose will be to tackle in depth the topics of accessibility and station surrounding parking. 2 meetings to announce for April 29th. The first, a hearing about the redevelopment of the High Point low-income housing complex in West Seattle. And on the same day, there will be a meeting in Fremont to discuss development plans for a new neighborhood park. If you would like more information about any of these events and issues mentioned today, we're pleased to direct you to our website at www.seattlechannel.org. And finally today, one of Seattle's founding fathers got a new honor this week. The legendary Doc Maynard came to Seattle in 1852, just a few months after the Denny Party. He was many things: the city's first physician, its first justice of the peace, and its first Indian agent. Indeed, it was Maynard who urged that the city be named after his good friend, Chief Seattle. Doc Maynard was also, legend has it, the city's first big drinker. He liked to party. A group of local history buffs, and partiers too, were disappointed recently to see the condition of Maynard's gravestone in Lakeview Cemetery on Capitol Hill. So they have chipped in and bought a new grave marker. The formal dedication is tomorrow, followed by, we suspect, drinks. And that's it for our news. Up next, dangerous dogs, what to do about them and their owners. Some say the city has gone overboard and is treating dogs too harshly, including sending them out of town and in some cases, euthanizing them. We tap into that debate next when City Inside Out continues in a moment. We now welcome Marshall Livingston. He is a member of the city's Animal Control Code Review Panel. Thanks for being here.
You're welcome.
One problem you cite with the current ordinance and the current way the city deals with dangerous dogs is there's no appeal process. You get a warning and that's it. You're cited, your dog's cited. Describe that. What's the problem with a warning?
Well, a warning can be given by anyone for any reason whatsoever. Your neighbor sees your dog barking and they feel threatened by this. So they call animal control and say, we have a dangerous dog in our neighborhood. I, as an individual, have no right to appeal that dangerous or potentially dangerous dog citation or warning. And the person who may have given this or had called animal control, I have no idea who this person is.
And they can do it anonymously.
Exactly, anonymous complaint. And what we have tried to do is give the ability for us to appeal that potentially dangerous dog citation.
And right now, I mean, there are some, I mean, citation is just a phrase for an ability to appeal. I mean, a citation couldn't be issued unless someone came, in other words, it ends the anonymous
Correct. They would have to
complaint process.
File and sign a sworn affidavit under what we've proposed, and that's really important because we would be able to appear before a magistrate just as anyone who gets, for having their dog off leash gets a citation, and they have an ability to appeal it before
and parking tickets and those kinds of things.
Impartial jury. And right now, the animal control is the prosecutor, the investigator, the judge, the jury, everything, and it's one person that makes a determination.
And right now, you get a warning, and there's no chance to fight it.
For it.
And we ought to make it clear to viewers who you are. You are a part of what's called the city's Animal Control Code Review Panel, a group that was established that's met for about 18 months. You've come out with recommendations to change the quote-unquote dangerous dogs ordinance.
Correct.
And that is what we're discussing today, and among the changes would be changing these from warnings to citations, give the appeal process, etc. Another thing you're proposing is to expand the definition of dangerous and potentially dangerous dogs. Right now, there's no distinction between a nip and a severe mauling.
Correct. We've tried to create 3 different levels within potentially dangerous dog, one that hasn't bitten, one that may have caused less than severe injury to a human, one that has caused severe injury to an animal but less than severe injury to a human being, and those types of things where they would have to wear a muzzle under the less than severe potentially dangerous dog, number 3, and then also 2 designations of categories in the dangerous dog levels.
To try and give, I mean, it's 5 levels you're expanding from, I think, 2 exist
2
now.
right now.
And the idea is, I guess, to sort of mimic kind of the way we deal with human assaults. I mean, there's assault in the 1st degree, in the 2nd degree, in the 3rd degree, in the 4th degree, that kind of stuff. You want to say, listen, not all dangerous dogs are created equal.
Exactly.
And that some are less dangerous in effect. Right now, as I understand it, if your dog is cited, warned, I guess as the case is now, as dangerous, that dog has to leave the city limits. It either gets euthanized, killed, or sent out of the city. You don't think that's fair?
That's not fair. I mean, there's 2 levels of dangerous dogs, and there's an opportunity, I think, for a dog to be rehabilitated, and right now there's no opportunity for any dog to be rehabilitated. And what we've tried to propose is by going through a certified animal rehabilitation specialist to let your dog move up within these levels of the categories, over a period of time if nothing else happens. Obviously a dog that has been given a dangerous animal level 5 warning, it's not a warning, it's, the dog is humanely destroyed. And
either killed or severely
right.
mauled a human.
I mean, we're not trying to change that.
Get rid of that dog,
yeah.
euthanize it, whatever.
But it's for those that, have the potential for rehabilitation. We'd like to be able to either, if they have to be moved outside of the city, to move them to an area that the owner could potentially go and visit the dog. Right now, they're just put to sleep.
Or shipped out.
Way away. And you have no ability to go visit your dog.
And there's no
again.
rehab. It's not like you can say, okay, my dog's been quote unquote under good behavior for. And again, this sort of mimics the way we do in the human court system,
yep.
where people get deferred sentencing and they go to rehab and different things.
Chance for parole.
Right. They will say that this committee was stacked. That all you folks that want to kind of enhance the rights of dogs, which is in effect the thrust of your proposals,
right.
Of course you're going to do that. You're a whole bunch of dog owners, and why wouldn't that come out of a committee like was convened?
Well, that's not necessarily true. We had different experts within the dog community. That there were behavioral specialists, there were veterinarians. There were people that didn't agree with every issue. None of us all agreed on every issue. There's no way possible that everybody on a proposed change is going to feel the same. Some people felt more strongly about items, others less. And I'm not a cat owner, but there were cat issues in this proposed change. And, I'm not an expert on a lot of the issues that we discussed, but I have a gut reaction as to what I feel is personally right. And there was a lot of debate and a lot of discussion, and very heated at times, so it wasn't really stacked.
Are all dogs created equal in your mind, or some more dangerous than others?
No, I think all dogs are created equal. I think it's the owners that sometimes neglect to take care of their dogs and don't really give them the guidance that a dog would need to be able to act in a good manner all the time. My dogs are in training. Not everyone can do that, but
I mean, you blame the owners for a lot of these.
More so than the dogs.
I mean, is a pit bull? Isn't a pit bull more dangerous than a poodle?
No, not at all. Not at all. They are equal. They're all pack animals. Every single dog. So a golden retriever is a pack animal. A poodle,
now, what do you mean by pack animal?
Pack animal, they group together. I mean, when they're together, they act like wolves are packs. They're.
So your point is there's not a real difference in behavior between all these dogs.
No.
It's an owner that's not effectively
either
doing what it
training their
takes.
dog or keeping good attention of the dog while they're in their control.
I suppose this philosophy is what underlies your recommendation to no longer be able to sell dogs at auctions and charity fundraisers.
Right.
How come?
Well, I don't think you want to. When you go to a fundraiser or an auction, you're not going there with the belief that you're going to come home with a dog. You need to think out when you buy a dog or adopt a dog from a humane society that you know what you're getting into, investigate it, read up upon the kind of dog you're going to get, whether your dog is a golden retriever or a poodle. They all do have different, innuendo. I don't know if innuendo is the right word, but they all
different
quirks,
temperaments. Yeah.
Temperaments, and
10 seconds.
You need to know that.
Thanks so much for being here.
Oh, you're welcome.
Marshall Livingston. Up next, someone with a different viewpoint of yours. He was on your panel, and he joins us. Indeed, he has been hurt by 2 pit bulls and thinks the city should not relax its dangerous dogs ordinance. Up next, when City Inside Out continues in a moment. We now welcome William Callahan. He too is a member of the Citizens Animal Control Code Review Panel. Thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
We should say 41 years as a veterinarian.
That's correct.
Just retired.
Correct.
What about this idea of due process? Marshall Livingston, the last guest, said that the problem with the current code is that you get warnings and you don't get citations. That doesn't allow you an appeal process. Anonymous complaints can, in effect, be truthful whether they are or not.
I think the first thing to remember is the purpose of any legislation, any municipal code, is to protect the citizens. That should be the basis upon which everything is drawn. Now, the appeal process for the citations as opposed to a warning, I can see that. I would not be opposed to changing. They say from an anonymous warnings, I don't count. It has to be a more effective warning.
We should say you remember this panel, and a lot of these recommendations ended up being split votes.
They were split votes.
You were on the minority side for a lot of these.
For most of these, and unfortunately on the panel, there were no citizen representation, and there was no victims of dog bites.
Now, what do you mean citizen representation?
Community groups, people that did not own dogs.
Okay, but everyone was a dog owner. But these are citizens.
These are citizens, but they're mostly advocacy groups too.
Fair enough. That's your argument. You, however, have been bitten.
Yes, that's
Describe
correct.
your. So you are a dog victim who was on the panel.
That's right. I was the only one. Yeah, I was in public property a couple years ago, just walking down the street at 7 o'clock in the morning. Was attacked by 2 pit bulls.
I mean, nothing to do with your practice.
Nothing to do with the practice. It was just ironic, so to speak.
How bad was your wound?
5 hours in the University of Washington emergency ward.
And your argument, as I understand it, is that under the new rules, that 5-hour trip to the hospital because of 2 pit bulls would not be designated a dangerous dog.
That is correct.
It would now. It wouldn't under the. It wouldn't under the.
Under the new condition, because there was no broken bones, because there is no disfiguring lacerations, whatever that might be, this would be a level 3 potentially dangerous dog. Because bite wounds, the term bite wounds is not included in the term of severe injury.
And just so people understand, severe injury means any physical injury. This is the new proposed way to describe it. Severe injury means any physical injury that results in broken bones or disfiguring lacerations or cosmetic surgery.
Requiring cosmetic surgery.
But the dogs that bit you under the new rule would be required. I mean, level 3, which is a potentially dangerous dog in the New Orleans, I don't want to get too into how many levels there are, but it would be required to be, I mean, that owner would get cited. They would be fined, in effect. That dog would be required to be muzzled. They'd have to be on leash. I mean, it's not just as though that dog gets a free ride.
If the owner of that dog had followed the leash law in the first place, that dog, number 1, would have been on leash if it was outside. Number 2, it would already have been supposedly in a restricted environment. This incident would have never happened. So to say now that, hey, we're going to give you one free bite, but if it happens again, we're really going to get on your case, I don't think it's right.
So right now there are kind of 2 categories, I understand: potentially dangerous and dangerous.
That's correct.
They the advocates here want to expand that into really five definitions.
That's correct.
Sort of 3 under the potentially dangerous and 2 under the dangerous.
correct.
Your argument is what? That it's pretty much working now.
Yeah, it's working now. There is already an appeal process to a hearing examiner. If you don't like what the hearing examiner says, then you can go to Superior Court. The difficulty with the 5 different levels, as I see it, is it's overlapping, somewhat confusing, somewhat ambiguous, that it's really going to be extremely difficult to effectively enforce.
Because it's too unclear?
It's because it's too unclear. That's a murky gray area in defining between some of these levels.
A less than severe injury. So the severe injuries are the dangerous dogs. The less than severe injuries are the sort of categories of potentially dangerous. Yeah. This is what they are defined to mean: significant physical pain and demonstrable injury or impairment of physical condition. That's not a good enough definition for you.
I think that's vague. I think if you exclude the term bite wound from severe which they do, from the definition of severe injury, you are automatically eliminating 90% of your incidents because they're bite wounds rather than broken bones or disfiguring lacerations.
Do you think your injury which were bite wounds, would have been under a less than severe injury here in this?
By this interpretation, yes, it would have
Okay,
been.
but your argument, it feels like it should have been
It
severe.
should have been a
What
severe.
happened to those pit bulls?
Fortunately, it's shortly after the attack, and this was early in the morning. One went out in the street on 45th and got hit by a car. The other one, the police had to, and animal control, and they had to shoot the dog. They couldn't get close to it.
The idea of rehabilitation, do you believe that?
No, I just don't, because I think in theory it sounds nice, but there is no licensed, certified behavioral training program that will give any degree of guarantee that a dog that has bitten someone, by their time they're through with that training program, that dog is fine now to mix with society. There is no certified process for this. There is no licensing process. And I think any animal behavioralist will tell you so, that that's the truth.
And so expanding these categories and allowing dogs to sort of move in and out of them based on good behavior.
I think that's questionable at best. I think that's questionable at best.
Do you think all dogs are created equal?
Basically, yes. I mean, I have seen in my practice.
In terms of temperament here?
Yeah. And I have seen, with a few exceptions, that most dogs respond to a good environment. Once in a while, you'll see a dog that has a puppy that is just bad and is still bad at 12 months and 18 months. That's a genetic thing.
So in effect, you kind of agree with our former guest.
Yes,
that,
and Mario, well, yes,
temperaments aren't. It's
Yes.
an owner issue.
Yeah. I would
mostly.
not denote just because a dog is a Doberman or a Rottweiler or a Pit Bull that's a bad dog. I would not note.
But do you not acknowledge that the injury that happened to you would probably not have happened if it was a poodle?
Absolutely. If this was a 12, 14, 25-pound dog, I could have either handled it myself, or a good swift boot would have deterred this dog. But two 60-pound Pit Bulls was the size that I couldn't handle.
Okay, so it was the size, not necessarily the breed.
That's correct.
The idea under the current law is that dangerous dogs don't really have any rights. The minute you're identified as dangerous, you're either euthanized or sent out of the city. And the advocates want to say, hey, listen, there ought to be a little more wiggle room there. We just got a minute left. But ought there to not be at least some kind of, less than euthanized, policy here, or just ship out policy?
Only if you agree, and only if the citizens of the city agree, that you are willing to give up one free bite to a citizen, one free bite that occurs to a child, and say, hey, I really feel sorry for this dog. Let's see if we can't change its behavior. I think that's taking an extreme risk.
Because your argument that you don't get one free bite
No
now,
free bites.
you would under loosened rules.
This is correct.
Do we euthanize too many dogs?
Over the last year, last 10 years, the city has euthanized 8 dogs. There's been only 12 administrative procedures, and of those, only 8 dogs were euthanized. Since 1994, that's almost 10 years. That's so minimal that I can't believe it.
William Callahan, thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
And we thank you all. Join us next week for another edition of City Inside Out. Until then, on behalf of our talented studio crew here at the program, I'm C.R. Douglas. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.